So you guys were able to figure out if the equation was in a certain form, we could just read the slope off the equation and we could read the y-intercept. So this first page is just another example. Let's say we graph this line using table of values. Well, now that we just did that previous little activity, what's the slope of this line? What's the y-intercept? Right, and that makes sense, right? Because you look, here's the y-intercept at 2. And the slope, well, here I would rise 1, run -1, because I'm going backwards. So 2 over -1 is -2. So here's just another example where the pattern fits. Okay, so in this one, the y-intercept, you guys, we've already figured out how to do it. It's 2, and the slope is -2, or, because when we use slope, we get -2 over 1. Okay. So what do we call this thing? It has to be like, if I said this, don't write this down, but what if I said this? What's the slope? Are you sure? What's wrong with this? Why? How does this look different than the ones we did? Y isn't by itself. So if Y is not by itself, if it's not in that specific form, you can't read the stuff. Okay? You have to put Y by itself. So we write it like this. This is the slope-intercept form. Of an equation of a line. And you will get used to seeing this. It takes the form y equals mx plus b, where m is a number that represents what? Slope. And I know we're just throwing this letter all of a sudden into the loop. Well, we don't say y here, right? Because we've already got y here. But this stands for what? The y-intercept. So not only can we use this to graph lines quickly, okay, but we can also use it to find equations of lines. So as an example, this time you're going to work backwards. How would you write the equation of this line? What would the equation look like? Y equals 3 over 5x. Nice, well done. Because all you do is you find the slope, that's the m part of the equation. Find the y-intercept, that's the b part of the equation. And then plug them in there. I should have told you to come at the beginning. I did one of those experiences first. Did you? I did. So there it is anyway. Okay. How would you graph it? What would you do to graph it? How would you start? Like, first of all, what are the two pieces? It's in the proper form. What are the two pieces of information you can tell me? Sorry? The slope is 1 over 2. The y-intercept is 3. So how do you think you'd use those two to figure out the graph? What would you, Elsie? Yes, but from where? Nice. We need to plot the y-intercept first, because in order to use the slope, don't we have to have a point to use? Well, that point that we use is going to be the y-intercept. So plot the y-intercept first. And then, like Elsie said, go up 1, across 2 to get a second point. And now that you've got 2 points, you know where the line is. So you go up 1, to the right 2, and you get your line. I'm going to add one here. I want you to try this one. Try that one. And help each other out if necessary. Put it on the same graph. For volunteer, Elsie, thank you. Oh. Why that? Yes, because I started at the y-intercept. Where would you start with this? What's the y-intercept of this, where you would start? -2. So it starts here. Okay, you always start with the y-intercept. Now we use the slope. Well, I need rise over run. So what's this as a fraction? 3/1. So from here, I go up 3 to the right 1 to get my next point. There's my line. So do you notice that with the table of values method and this slope intercept method, y has to be by itself, right? Which one do you think is faster? Probably this one, okay? This one's good to use, and it's good to use too because it helps us find equations of lines too, like the next example. Doesn't mean that table of values isn't useful. It is. How would you find the equation of this line? Well, in order to find the equation, we have to use this form. But I have to fill in the missing numbers for M and B. What would I fill in? What would I fill in for M? You sure? Or do you have them flipped? Isn't -4 the y-intercept? So wouldn't that be B? Right? Okay. So that goes there. -4 goes there. And then the slope, what did you say, Avery? 3/2. Down 3. To the right 2 would be -3/2. So be careful with your up and down and left and right and your positive and negative. So it'd be -3/2x. Okay. And finally, here's another spot where we can use these things because it's always helpful to be able to use them. So we're not going to graph. We're just going to use the equation, kind of like we did with the Jasper's driveway, except this time you got to make the equation. Student council sponsored a dance. The ticket cost $5. The cost for the DJ was $300. What would be an equation to calculate the profit? If Like, how would you calculate the profit if you sold 10 tickets? 5 times 10, subtract 300, right? What about if you sold 200 tickets? 5 times 200 minus 300. What if you sold T tickets? There's your equation. So the profit P is going to be 5 times whatever the number of tickets is minus the cost of the DJ, because you got to pay for the DJ. Well, notice that this is actually a form of this. So like if you wanted to graph this situation, you draw a graph, you'd have to plot negative 300 for the y-intercept, and then you'd have to use the slope of 5 to get another point, and then you could draw the graph of the profit. But here we'll just leave it at this, because now that we've got the equation, how would I answer these questions? 123 people bought tickets. How would I calculate the profit? 5 times 123 minus 300. And that would give us, anybody got it by chance? Sorry? 315, thank you. And that's dollars. For C, what would you do for C? What's that? Replace P with 350, because this time we got to find T. Smartboard is not working at the bottom. Well, what did we set up this time? An equation. How do I solve this? Add 300. And then divide 5. T is equal to 130. 130 tickets. Mm-hmm. And finally, the last question. Is it possible to make a profit of $146? I'll do it up here. How would you figure that out? Is it possible to make 146 bucks? Is it possible that P is 146? What would you do? With what? Yes. And again, we have to figure out what T is. Add 300 to both sides. Divide both sides by 5. So we get what? 88.2. Is that right? Why do I feel like I've done something wrong? 89? No, 89. Yes, 89.2. So is it possible? Why not? You can't have 0.2 of a person or a student or a ticket. Okay? No matter how much you want to argue it, because I know you guys like to argue it sometimes. Well, technically, that's right. Okay. So, no, can't have part of a person. Sonia, that was your perfect chance to tell on me.
I was thinking about that too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you should have.
No, I'm a good person. I'm supposed to strength. And you nominated me.
I did.
Ooh, we did that. That is a yes.
I don't know who nominated that. Somebody did.
No. Natalie,
What's wrong with Natalie?
nothing.
You're, God, you're so mean. You're almost as mean as me. See, you could have got me fired, and then I wouldn't have had to come in next week. Well, you said you were going to go tell Hattie. Oh, you didn't mean that. Oh. Am I still recording?
You think that's funny?
I do. You know why? Because I am hilarious. That's why. And that's the last thing I'm going to say.